One big team. Let's go. Today, episode 9, I had on Mikey Thompson. Mikey is my former college coach. He's a great mentor to me and many others. He's currently the head coach of CNU, Christopher Newport University men's lacrosse program. They're coming off a historic season. We dive into the season. We dive into core values for his own life and for the program. We talk mindfulness and meditation, neutral thinking and positive energy, all of the great things that we like to discuss here on the One Big Team podcast. So I know you guys will get a ton of value out of it, and go give Mikey a follow and the CNU men's lacrosse page a follow as well to keep up with their journey. And I would deeply appreciate a subscribe, a click on that button, a couple likes here and there, share with a couple friends or all of your friends, all of your family members, do whatever you'd like on that case. But it would be appreciated because we're trying to grow this thing and have a bigger positive impact. So thank you and enjoy the episode. Mikey, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. You're definitely one of my all-time favorite people, without a doubt, my favorite coach that I've had. So I know that the people that listen to this will get a lot of great things out of it, even if we're not the world-leading experts in all the things that we're going to talk about. But thank you for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fired up. I'm always fired up to talk to you.
You're the man. All right, let's dive into gratitude. So what do you got? We got 10:03 East Coast time. It's a rainy day down at the beach for you, but what are a couple things that you can express some gratitude for that you've experienced today?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'm incredibly grateful for the season that we just wrapped up at CNU. It was a really, really challenging year in a lot of ways. But I think there's so many people behind the scenes that don't get any credit for pulling something off like the season that we had. And the first one for me is my wife. I mean, we have a 10-month-old kid, and so she works full time as a nurse anesthetist. And to think of all the nights that I came home late after practice, or all the weekends that I was away down the stretch for games, there's so much work that goes into everything here at the house. So really, really grateful for that. And just to have that support, she was watching all the games and such a huge fan. So, but there's so many people in roles like that, whether it's like the equipment staff at CNU or the administration, people that don't get a lot of credit is something that I'm really grateful for, to have such a great season.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I can tell the season's on your mind. So I'll give a quick background and then I'll let you dive into your more personal background. But, Mikey Thompson was my coach at CNU. He came in 2011, the year that I arrived, and he's an assistant coach. And then my senior year, midway through, he took over as interim. And then at the end of that spring, he took over. So Mike, who's my coach, he's currently coaching at CNU. I know on behalf of all the alumni and fans of CNU lacrosse, we're super proud of all the things that him and the staff. And, the point that was just made, Mikey, like, it's so much bigger than just the guys on the team. Meg being the superstar that she is allows you to do your job at a high level. And for your players, the relationships that they have, even with professors and friends and their network and their parents. And I think about that now with the high school kids that I work with. I think that's a great piece to and we can touch on that throughout the conversation, but the awareness of community and how it also impacts our performance on the field. Our relationships are so important. And I think when we talk relationships as a coach, we're always like teammates, but really it's like, well, who are the other people right outside of the team that you're seeing every day? So I think that's a beautiful thing I'm sure we can dive into. But for the listeners, can you kind of give us a background, growing up, playing days, coaching days, just some of the highlights? What do you got?
Well, yeah, just to touch on that before I get into the background, the amount of alums and parents and fans of the program that we had at our games down the stretch, especially during a year of COVID when we had a lot of empty stadiums, that was so, so cool. And it's like anything, it's been this process of building a program, and to see some of those alums and how engaged they were right behind our bench, in those last couple games. It was really, really cool. So that's such a great point, that it's so much bigger than just the guys that are in that locker room. It's become this force of people that are all kind of, behind the same cause. And that was one of the most exciting things about the whole thing. But yeah, background, I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. My dad was a coach at collegiate school, and he was an athlete. Played all the sports that I played growing up. But he's also a counselor for his entire life. He had his own private practice, and he also was the high school counselor at collegiate when I was going through school. So so in terms of mentors, like he's always been my number one mentor, and having someone to bounce ideas off of or talk to every day going into school, that's kind of shaped me into who I am today. And just the impact that I think I saw him make on other people that were struggling, really kind of is deeply rooted in me. I had so many, like, looking back, I had so many adults and so many families like come up to me when I was in like middle school and be like, you have no idea how much your dad has helped me. And so I love to coach and I love to help kids get better on the field. But I think like deep down, that's what kind of excites me the most. But played kind of every sport, that I could growing up. I had a really unique group of friends. Like we were one of those packs of friends that just went to the same place every weekend and all we did is compete. Whether it was like pool basketball or like goalie wars or, tackle football, like it was on every single weekend. And that like carried through all the way through high school. And I think that's one of the reasons that we are so successful. We won 2 straight state championships in football. And then my senior year, we won the state championship in lacrosse too. But like, that's just what we were all about. Like we just wanted to compete. We wanted to win. And it was really, really important to us. And I think that kind of shaped my competitive side was my group of friends growing up. Then I went off to Virginia, played lacrosse there for 4 years. We had some really, really good teams. My senior year in 2010, we won the ACC, which was really exciting. Obviously the ultimate goal, we played in 3 straight Final Fours and we never won the national championship when I was there as a player. And then in 2011, when I was helping out coach, was the year that we actually got it done and won the national championship. And I, for the listeners, that was a very unique year. It was probably the year that we had the slightest chance of winning, but everything kind of came together. And I think to win those types of games, as you saw this year watching Memorial Day weekend, you need a little bit of luck. You need everything to kind of come together to get it done. So I think looking back on all those years that we didn't win, one of them was overtime, lost to Syracuse. Another one was that amazing game versus Duke at night at M&T Bank Stadium where Quinzani scores with a couple seconds left. Like, those games could go either way, and it takes a little bit of luck to ultimately get it done.
Quick sidebar there. I actually got a text from a coach today, and it said, luck. Someone said good luck, and luck is, when preparation meets opportunity. But I think you could sneak in belief into that, right? Because in those situations when it's like, it could go either way. It's all, and like, I'd like to think both of those teams are believing it, but I think, and I know that's one of the core values of the program, but that's something that kind of just hit me in regards to luck. I do believe, preparation meets opportunity. You're in the moment, you trust your abilities, like you're fully present, but also like the luck factor is a little bit, it's optimism, right? And it's like a deep belief that things are going to go a good way. Can we dive in before we talk about your transition into coaching into CNU? Can we talk about optimism, belief, and like, how you've kind of incorporated it into CNU and your thoughts on it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, optimism is that belief that something good is about to happen. So like, if you can just hammer that into the heads of, your players, and if you can just continue to believe that no matter how things are going right now, like all it takes is one thing that could flip. And that momentum can change really quickly. So if you always have that belief that something good is about to happen, then you're never really out of the fight, and you always believe that you can make the play that needs to be made at the most important time. And just having that belief too, that if you just keep doing the right things over and over and over again, good things are going to happen, is a really good long-term strategy as well, because obviously things are not going to go your way. And if you just have that, I think the perfect word is grit, just that belief that, you can persevere regardless of how things are happening right now, that over time you're going to get to where you want to go. But yeah, you got to believe, you got to have some resilience, and you got to just keep coming back to what's right in front of you and know that you're able to do it. So I think that that comes to the forefront in those big games and those tight moments.
Yeah. So 2011, as a grad assistant coach, UVA, you get the championship. Sure, an incredible experience. And then you come over to CNU, and I mean, we meet. Your younger brother JT is my best friend. We're there. What a crew that was. Can you talk about it's been 10 years at CNU, and the trajectory, your personal growth, the program, and just kind of where we're at now with it.
Yeah. Well, my time at UVA was incredible. Great friends, great success on the field, but there are also some things that happened that were like, you wouldn't really think would happen in the lifetime of anybody.
Yep.
One of my good friends died of suicide when I was a junior. And then, another good friend, Yardley Love, passed away as well with that whole incident. So it was like, it was this real world stuff that hit me right between the eyes when I was in my, most, like that was when I was really trying to figure it all out and figure out what I wanted to do after college. So, Coach Starja, Coach Van Arsdale, those guys that led us through those really difficult times, like those guys made such a huge impact on me. And I knew that it was going to be challenging, but I wanted to have the ability to have that type of impact on college kids. And so that's kind of what ultimately led me into coaching. And so when I started coaching, I wasn't necessarily going into CNU because I thought we were going to win a national championship right away. I mean, I'm not sure that our team was in the top 100 back then. There was a lot to be done to be able to compete with some of the best teams in Division III, but it was more of, hey, even if we're not going to be great on the field, I feel like I can make an impact with these guys, and we can start building a culture that's going to be healthy and a culture where people are going to have some pride in what they're doing and whatnot. So that's what the early days were all about. We're figuring out who are the leaders on the team that we had that we could promote on a daily basis, that had some of those leadership qualities, that were really good teammates, that wanted it, that worked hard. How could we, promote those guys? And then ultimately over the years, how could we get more of those guys and gain some momentum that way? It was all about culture building. It was all about figuring out, how to instill that work ethic with the guys that we did have. And then over time, once the recruiting starts to take form, then that's when you can start winning some games. But I guess it all started from a place of, let's just make sure that we're giving these guys a good experience and we're valuing everybody on the team and giving them a good experience before we really focus too much on winning games.
So I remember being there, maybe it was my sophomore year, and you and the other coaches were talking about, our goal is to make CNU the greatest place to play lacrosse. And I don't know if it was Division III, just like Virginia, or the whole country, but I remember being a part of that conversation. And, that speaks to the experience. And that was off the field. That was the feel and the vibe of the program. And I remember that as a player, I was like, man, that's motivating too. Like, I love that idea. And I think for anyone listening, there's value in just being aware of setting the environment and how the environment impacts you, and anybody in a leadership position. Like, what are you doing to make the experience of the people you're around the best it can possibly be? And that could be a high school player that listens to this. Like, what are you doing as a teammate to set that environment? Are you communicating with your coaches to talk about the environment and what needs to be worked on? But I know, firsthand, that was something that you guys were intentional about and communicated that with us. And it definitely has worked. So I got a funny one for you. So let's paint the picture here. So it's 2016. I got hair down to my butt. We just finished the season, and let's say we're at the banquet. Okay. And let's say somebody comes up to us and goes up to you and goes, hey, so you think in 5 years you guys will be in the Final Four and Mabes will be having you on a podcast? What would you say? Would you be like, I think it's spot on, or I don't know?
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. I can see it. I think that, I mean, I can always remember you and your mom in the stands, and your mom would do this thing with her hands. And
Yep.
she's like, lacrosse is an energy game. You can feel the momentum. And I was like, man, that's a really cool family. And I always loved coaching you. And so I'm not really that surprised. And I think that, you know, the belief in the school and in the program was always there. That we could kind of gain some momentum and start doing some cool things. And so yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised back then.
Yeah, I thought about that the other night, and I was like, yeah, this is spot on. And you know, I had belief in myself to go out and do things, and didn't know it'd turn into this right now, but definitely in the program. Like that was my anchor when we were there, was this program's going to win a national championship one day. And I remember, and people say, right, you've heard the people that you listen to, if your vision isn't big enough that it doesn't scare you or make people laugh at you, it's not big enough to really get you out of bed and get going. And I remember those early days being like, yo, we want to win a national championship. And some of the older guys being like, dude, shut up. Like, it's you're making us uncomfortable, you know? And then it took time for everyone to be comfortable just saying that. And by the time we left in 2016, it was like, yeah, that's the direction we're going in. Right. And we're not going to pretend like it's going to happen this second. We're going to work every day, and, you know, it'll happen when it happens. But that was something that we were really, as the players, you know, we were really serious about. So I'm not surprised at all that you guys just finished up the best season in program history, getting to the Final Four with some incredible wins. And, you know, it just makes me think, and when we texted the other day, I've just been so focused on belief systems and what you believe is possible for yourself. And the phrase, and I'm curious for you, you know, both as a player and seeing it as a coach, like the phrase is, you won't outperform your belief system. And I look back on it and I go, I played exactly how I believed I was capable of playing. I played in my box. I was pretty good one-on-one, good communicator. I didn't like taking the ball up the field because I didn't believe that I could get by guys. I definitely had the physical ability to get by guys better, but I didn't believe that I could take the ball in the middle of the open field. So I never did it. Right. And I work with players and we have those conversations and people, and, you know, it's been so fascinating to me. And I know it's one of the core values of the program, and we touched on it a little bit. Do you think that's accurate for yourself? I mean, you're an incredible player and doing things now, but what do you think about that in the phrase of, like, you know, our belief system and what's possible for us?
Yeah. I think it's basically like, what's your vision for yourself? And, like you said, like you have to set a vision of what is possible for you, not necessarily what's likely for you, so that you can always be pushing. And that's going to be different for everybody. You know, like some people don't necessarily have some grand vision for themselves, and that's fine. Like whatever it is that really, really fires you up, and the things that you naturally care about and you're naturally passionate about, like those are the things that you want to invest your time and energy into. And that's not always a national championship. That's not always, you know, making a ton of money and being a CEO. Yeah, I think that, like, the more, you know, books I read and the more I kind of get down this path of coaching, like the most important thing is to just be yourself and be like super authentic to who you are. And, you know, before we started recording here, I was talking about how, like, I listen to a lot of podcasts and books. And one of the things that I always think about is how people kind of try and act like they know all the answers. And like, for me, it's really important to the listeners to know that I don't know all the answers, you know, like I'm just trying to take what I'm naturally passionate about and do the best every single day. But there are struggles, and you have to set that goal, but it has to be really unique to you, and it has to be something that you naturally really, really care about. And that's the only way you're going to be able to get after it day after day. If it's someone else's goal and it's someone else's dream, you're just going to burn out. You know, it's not going to ever be that. It's not ever going to be important enough to you. So I think that having really, really good clarity about what it is you want is more important than just some arbitrary goal of, let's say, winning a national championship. Because for me, what you said earlier about being the best place in Division III to play lacrosse, that's more important to me than winning a national championship. Because at the end of the year, there's only one team that gets to be called national champion. But when you have all these other systems in place, you have alums that are engaged, you have families who are supportive of each other and of the team. You have kids that are having a really good experience, regardless of whether they're playing or not. Like, all of those kind of things are ultimately more important to me than that ultimate goal of winning the national championship. So that's maybe a long-winded answer, but that's kind of how I see the belief and all that.
Yeah, no, it's a great answer. And touching on, being authentic to yourself, having a vision, core values, personal philosophy, right? And I'm a big believer in that, being authentic. If we're constantly developing ourselves, we're going to impact those around us better, right? And that's regardless of who you are, right? That's just your energy you're putting off, the things that you're able to help somebody with, because we're not experts in anything. We could act that way, right? We have beginner's mind in anything. But if we've read these books, if you've read this book and you've studied something you're passionate about and it's helped you, and one of your players comes to you and says, I'm dealing with this, and you have an answer that's worked for you specifically because you've done that work, you've invested the time in better understanding yourself and how to improve, to them, you're the expert. You've just helped them grow through that. So in regards to that, striving for that vision, right? Do you have a personal philosophy or core values that you're aiming to live by every day?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my kind of main three are mentor. I want to be able to mentor my guys, because I have had some very unique experiences throughout my life. So when college kids go through stuff that they ultimately will go through, that's really, really difficult, I want to be someone that they can talk to, and someone that can help them through the good times and the bad times. Inspire is one of my big words. Like, I want to be able to inspire people to just do whatever they really want to do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to just take some cookie cutter coach model and just kind of be, I want to really inspire people to do whatever they want to do and to be themselves. Like I just talked about, like, be a standard bearer is the way we like to think of it within our team. Like, not everybody's going to be the guy scoring all the goals. One of our guys that doesn't play very much might have a great power clean, or they might be really engaged in community service, or it doesn't really matter what it is, but we want everyone within our team to figure out something that they're maybe the best at amongst the group, and to really go for that, and to be like, hey, this is really important to our team that you crush community service, or that you, set the tone in the weight room. Like, all those kind of things are really, really important to us. So, like, give them the tools to go for it, because you always want kids to work on their weaknesses. And if a starting midi doesn't have a good offhand, like, yes, they need to work on that, but there might be a kid that has no shot of playing, but they might be really, really good in another aspect, and it might be really important to them. That might ultimately be the thing that they gravitate towards post-college. So, like, I want to be able to inspire them to go for that, and to really embrace that. And then the last one is just, like, exhaust every moment. That's kind of a mindfulness term. But gosh, it's so hard to just like be in the moment these days. There's so many distractions. And I think, I'm 33, so I get it. I understand what all these distractions are trying to do and what the goal of them is. But for high school kids and for college kids, they might not even be aware of how crazy their lives actually are. So to try and personally be in the moment, and to be able to work with our guys on what that actually means, and some of the skills that it takes to tune out all the noise around them, and just, like, realize that, this moment is really all they've got, is one of my really important principles as well.
It's funny, you said mentor and inspire. I literally have those two words written down right next to each other in just my notes for conversation, and the mindfulness piece. I think all three of those things are I think you're on point with, the way that I see you as a coach. And I think all of the players would agree that you are, leading that way, that you've been an authentic mentor to them. You're inspiring them to figure out what they're great at and, helping them be more present, which is where all the good stuff happens. I think what you said was a great point for people to take the time to think. And, listen, like parents are going to listen to this. I get text messages from parents, current players, alumni I've coached, all different ages. But I did want to start this to help younger players. That was my original target market, and it still is. And I think what you just said is definitely going to help me as a coach, because there's going to be guys on the end of the bench that are not going to, unless, X amount of guys get hurt, skill-wise, athleticism, they're not the best option to put in the game for 48 minutes, right? For a high school game. Okay. Like for 48 minutes, you're not going to be the superstar in this area, but you're really doing a great job setting the tone in the weight room, and you might find that you're super passionate about your health and wellness, and you might be a strength coach one day if you keep leaning into this. And also by getting the guys to buy in more, you're using great communication skills and leadership skills and the community service and all of the things that teams are really doing behind the scenes, outside of that 60-minute game for you guys. And I think that's a great point and something that I'm going to take away with, because I've had kids on the end of the bench throughout the season, like, hey, what can I do to get better? What can I do? And at some point, hey, if you keep getting 100 lefty reps a day, like, are you getting better at your craft? Is it giving you a better chance? Absolutely. But what if you divert a little bit of that attention to having a bigger impact here? Giving them that option, because that's not a conversation I'm hearing often. And I think that when you have a great relationship with your coach and the coach is being authentic and honest and there's trust there, you can have that conversation, and that's just a healthy relationship. So I think that's a great point. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah. Well, think about a guy like Tommy Brackett, he's a PVI guy, and he just won the Yarley Love Unsung Hero Award for all of Division III. And I mean, that guy is such a natural leader, and he brings, I've talked about it a million times, how much he brought to our team this year with his energy and his mentality on the sidelines. Like when we were down, he would get us up. Like, and imagine if after practice every day, Tommy walked up to me and he was like, hey coach, what can I do to start? That's just taking the attention away from something that he naturally does. Like that would almost be a waste, because like Tommy's doing everything that he can to set himself up for success and to be a great goalie. He's already doing that stuff. And a lot of guys that don't start are doing those things. But if you turn the attention towards something else that they can bring to the team, I mean, what's cooler than for our program, Tommy Brackett winning that award? I mean, it's amazing. It's more important than an all conference award or something like that. So like, let's really highlight the things that these guys are doing besides just their stat line. And that gives them such a bigger piece of the entire puzzle, and what makes, what kind of creates the texture of your culture and of your team. And everybody's got something. You just have to figure out what it is. And as long as they're doing all the other stuff that you expect of them within your program, you can really find unique ways to make people feel like they're a big part of the team, regardless of if they play or not.
Completely agree. Specifically, Tommy Brackett, got hurt his senior year, couldn't play for a high school goalie. And he was an amazing leader on the sideline, and he mentored our younger goalie, Luke, who's now killing it at Bryant. And a lot of Luke's success and us winning the state championship the next year is accredited to Tommy and the way that he led. And we have an award that we give out at PVI for the guys who deal with adversity in a positive way. But to cast light on this, and I'm sure Tommy would be fine with me sharing this, he called me, probably like 100 days ago. And he was like, I'm pissed, like I'm not playing, but like, I want to play. And I said, all right, we talked, and I understand everybody wants to play. Like that's a natural frustration. And I framed it to him and I said, Tommy, I go, you got about 75 days left of college lacrosse. What do you really want out of this? Because your focus should be best experience possible. Continue to prepare so that if you guys are in the national championship and the guy in front of you gets hurt, you're ready to go and you go in and win. And that kind of goes to the optimism and belief. And, like I'm a mentor to him. We communicate a lot. And I think it's important there because Tommy just won this amazing award. He's had an incredible impact at 2 different programs. but there's still a moment where he had to reach out to somebody and was like, man, I'm frustrated. And I think it doesn't, you win any award, like there's so many other people in these relationships and mentors and people that you lean on throughout that process. And I think that's an important thing to highlight, that, because you accomplish something, it doesn't mean each day is like the best day ever and you're getting the award. I'm sure there's days where it was like, damn, it's tough, man. I'm not on the field making the saves, but I got to get it going for the team. And I think it's important to acknowledge that.
Yeah, for sure. And the way that all this kind of ties together, at least within our program, is that, it's one of our core values. And we always say your number one job is to be a great teammate. Mm-hmm. So it's like, this stuff all sounds great if you think about guys being standard bearers and having their piece in all these different areas. But like at the end of the day, that's the standard.
Yeah.
And you have to be a great teammate. And if at any point I don't feel like you are a great teammate, then it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. So it's like we do all this stuff to create a great environment. But if at any point we feel like your I is more important than the we, mm-hmm. and you wanting to play becomes so important that you're a distraction or you're not supporting your teammates, mm-hmm. then that's where we draw the line.
Yep.
And so, you think about us trying to continue to grow and be a top 10 program. What does that require? Well, sometimes it requires from a recruiting standpoint, or let's use bringing in a transfer here and there. If that kid honestly gives us the better chance to win in those 60 minutes, and that means you taking a different role, if your frustration becomes a distraction, then that's not good. Like, mm-hmm. if you just literally think about your number one goal is to be a great teammate, regardless of the situation, that really is our guiding principle with the entire team. And you have to think of it that way, because there are all these other things that being part of our program is going to give you, but that's the ultimate sacrifice that you have to be willing to make, is that under no circumstances am I going to be a bad teammate.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it all ties together.
You just said frustration to distraction. And I've probably talked about this on the podcast before. It's something that's really helped me, that I learned from a mental performance coach, and it was turning frustration into fascination. And if each time you feel that resistance, and it could be a transfer coming in and this person taking your starting spot, whatever it may be, if it is the feeling of frustration and things are not going the way that you expected them to go, right? Reality is different than your expectations. If you can start transferring that energy into fascination, and why is this happening? And you get curious about it. And what can I learn from it? There's so much more here behind the scenes that I can better understand. You're going to go through that process. It still may be some resistance and it may not feel great, no doubt, but you're going to get a lot more out of it. And I definitely needed that reminder today, to just always turn that frustration into fascination, and you're just going to learn at a much better rate. And I think that's just a good gem to always remind people of, because we're going to come across resistance, no doubt.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be just frustration. Like, it can be any type of adversity. Mm-hmm. And, the thing that kind of ties all this together from a growth standpoint is that's really that's the only time you do grow, is when you have some sort of pain or frustration or adversity. So like the people that are really, making moves in life are the ones that really see that adversity and that pain and that frustration as an opportunity for growth, as opposed to turning the other way and running. And so you're exactly right. And, I know we're going to get into this a little bit, but like some of the mindset skills, like one of the most important ones is probably confidence. Mm-hmm. And, the way to have confidence on a daily basis is really to like put yourself in challenging situations. Yep. And so that you can be like, all right, I can do this. Like, that's all you need to do, is be like, I can do this. And I don't really even care if I fail or succeed, but I can go for it. And that's where like putting yourself in those challenging situations where you've been frustrated, like that's what it's really all about. Is that relationship that you have with failure, and that ability to just be like, all right, I'm going to go for it. And if you have that mentality, you can be pretty dangerous.
One of the mindset skills drills that I've learned, and I've been using it for years. And just, for me, it was just kind of common sense. A lot of people talk about, and my guy, Brian Kane, calls it signs of success, right? It's like putting up the mantra, put up your core values where you can see it every day, right? Look at it, try to generate it within you. And I think I'm definitely going to write down and put on a note card in my room. You're either making moves or making excuses. Because I love what you said, like everybody who's doing it at a high level and having growth in their life and is happy with the direction they're going in, they're just taking the challenge, the frustration, the adversity, the struggle, and getting more out of it. Right. And they're just making moves off of it. So I
got to stop you there, because I know that you just had Chris Bachlet on the podcast.
Yeah.
Chris was one of my all-time favorites at UVA.
Mm-hmm.
And we always used to just say, like, in college, like, you know Chris now, like, know the type of person he is. And we would just look at each other and just go, moves. Like, that was our thing. We would always just say moves. And like, it didn't even matter what it meant, but it was just like, it's time to like go do something and make moves. And now that you know Chris a little bit better, you gotta reach out and just say moves.
That is a beautiful mantra. I love that. And then, going into confidence, doing challenging things, putting yourself in a challenging situation. One of the simplest ways that I've been helping players on skill development with confidence, and I got this from basketball players, right? Every basketball player is like, I don't leave the gym until I hit 10 threes, or I don't leave the gym until I sink X amount of free throws. And when if you define confidence as doing what you say you're going to do, or that's the way that you get better at it, and you go, all right, I got to do 20 BTBs in a row. And, you drop it, you start over. And this is a model that players have been doing for a long time, but it builds confidence, no doubt. And I'm seeing it with all the players I'm working with. And we find a level, right? And some kids, it was like a defenseman the other day, 7th grader. It was a shovel pass, 5. The number was 5. Right? Couldn't get it. It took a while. We got 5. I said, 10, let's do it. And he was like, and he did it the second time. And you could see him. He was like, oh, I can do shovel passes now. And it was just by setting those parameters. So what are, in regards to confidence, like over the years, maybe developing your own confidence as a player or as a coach, or helping people, your players, with their confidence? What are some of those things that kind of stick out? Because it's probably the biggest thing that players ask me, coach, like, I'm just not feeling confident today. That's probably like the number one. And there's a lot of other things that go into it, but I hear that a lot. So I'd love to hear your perspective on it, personal, what you've shared with others, that kind of gig.
Yeah. Putting yourself in competitive situations where there's a winner or a loser, like, that's one of the biggest things that we do in practice is we try to make every drill as competitive as possible when we can. We'll have a scoring system. And so you put yourself in those game-like situations, and you can draw back on those times when you were successful, when you hit that game-winning shot. And I forgot who it was, but I was listening to something talking about Jack Nicklaus and how someone in the media was like, he basically claimed that he never missed a 3-foot putt on the 18th hole. And then there was a couple guys in the media that were like, not to be disrespectful, but I can remember this time, and this time. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yep. Like, it didn't happen. Uh-huh. And so having that ability to just draw back on all those good memories of all the shots that you did hit, as opposed to all those times that you failed. And then you combine that with just this overall mentality that, like, even if I do fail, I'm going to be fine. Like, there's something really powerful about that. And when we started doing some visualization with our defense, late in the year, part of the, scenario that we would draw up is like, hey, we go down 3 goals early. Like, we're fine. You know what I mean? So it's not like all these visualizations and all the things that you're trying to tell yourself are like, everything's going to be great, because it's not, it's not, but you have to be able to like, if you always have that feeling in the back of your head that you can do difficult things and that you're going to be okay, and that, like, even if you do lose, you're going to be fine, then that gives you a little bit more freedom to just go for it, as opposed to being like, all right, I have to make my first 3 shots or I'm done. Like, you think about a goalie. I mean, look at the D3 national championship game just a couple days ago. None of the goalies were necessarily playing great early in that game, But all that really matters is that next save. And the next save might be the most important one. So you can't let your confidence get rattled. You just have to you have to keep, again, returning to the present moment and being like, all that matters is the next one.
Yeah.
And that's a big piece of confidence as well, because you don't have to carry the past with you. You can just be like, all right, I'm on to the next one.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I'm actually reading How Champions Think right now by Bob Rotella, and he shares that story of Jack Nicklaus. And
there you go. That's where I heard it.
Yeah.
That's the book.
Which is great. I'm really enjoying it. And his first 2 chapters, it's on belief and a confident self-image. And that's in this self-image. And he's like, yeah, to Jack Nicklaus, the way he was operating, he really doesn't believe he's ever missed that. And why would he, if he's a performer? And he makes a note. He's like, not everybody's going to understand that. You have to really drive this self-image so deeply into your brain that you're going to start acting like that more and more and more. I think that's a great point, and I'm really enjoying that one. And he was the director of sports psychology at UVA for a long time. So I don't know. Did you guys ever work with him?
We did not, but I've read one of his other books that's called Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. That's
Yep. Yeah. I got that one on the shelf. He's pretty awesome. I have a second degree connection to him. I'm going to try to get him on. Bob Rotella, if you're out there, if you're one of the listeners, you're up next, buddy. So one of the other things that there's 2 things that you talked about, I've heard failures built in, right? So it helps when you visualize it. I got tripped over the cage. How am I going to respond? And that's probably another thing that I see that players struggle with is they let that frustration of, I'm talking wall ball. I'm talking, trying a new wall ball drill and they're dropping it. And I can see that frustration. Well, if I'm not there and their parents didn't drop them off, they may not continue with it, right? Not everybody has that mindset early on. They don't get fascinated by it. They get distracted, they get upset, and they leave it on. But I try to communicate, and I think it's important. And what you just touched on, it's like failure's built in. And it's like we need to keep rebranding failure because there's no one bats 1,000 in anything. Nobody's 100% in anything. It doesn't exist. And yeah. So in regards to helping the defense understand, you go down 3, no big deal. What's your framework on failure and how do you try to talk to it? And maybe even under the guise of you guys lost, you guys went on a 3-game losing streak this year, a losing streak, right? You lost 3 games, right? Like how are you communicating with the guys after that?
Yeah. One of the things that we talked a lot about before the year is this concept of neutral thinking. And I'm sure we've talked about it before, but it's basically that the past is not predictive of the future unless you allow it to be. So it's like whatever just happened, that doesn't mean that that's going to continue to happen unless you bring it into the present moment in your next actions. So it's like, it's not that you're blind and you're trying to act like what just happened didn't happen, because it did, but it also has nothing to do with what you do next, as long as you're really good about coming back to neutral. So you don't want to ever get too high and you don't ever want to get too low. And when we come together as a team after a win or after a loss, we talk about, the things that we did well and the things that need immediate attention, so that no matter if we won or we lost, we get back to neutral and then we get back to what, doing what we need to do. So I think that's really powerful, because it's like, we always want to wallow in our losses, or we want to ruminate after we make a mistake, but that's not going to help. It's not going to help what you have to do next. Like the next moment requires your full attention. And if you're still in the past, or whether that's good or bad, it's going to affect you. So you just have to be really, really relentless and disciplined about that mentality, so that you can take little bits and pieces of the stuff that you need to change and the stuff that made you successful, and then just get back to work. And I think that concept of neutral thinking is really, really powerful, because again, we've all been there. We've come off of a big win, and it's almost like you try and hide from all the stuff that didn't go well. You're never as good as you think you are when you win, and you're never as bad as you think you are when you lose. So it's you don't want to just act like you're going to go out there and do it again just because you did it last time. Like you have to like start back it from neutral, and you have to do it kind of like one play at a time. So I think it's almost more important after you win a game than after you lose a game, because everyone's naturally going to be a little bit hungry after they lose a game.
A great quote that just popped in, Mr. Miyagi, Karate Kid 2 or 3. It's okay to lose. You must not lose to fear.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think I did this video. I haven't posted it yet. I think because I want to redo it because I'm trying to be perfect here. But I was watching Cobra Kai, and this scene pops up, and he's like, Daniel LaRusso is just getting his ass kicked. I mean, like, it's like, I think it's Karate Kid 2. Like, he's getting beat up. It couldn't be any worse. And he's like, I'm done. I'm quitting. And Mr. Miyagi's like, no. He's like, it's okay to lose, but you must not lose to fear. And I was like, that's it. That's gold. Like, that is incredible. And I made me think, I was like, I know what it looks like to lose to fear in my own life. And I know what it looks like in the huddle. And I think what you're talking about, neutral thinking and like predicting a bad outcome because of the past, like that's, you're losing to that fear of like, oh, we might lose because we just got the goal scored on us. And if that guy just stung it from 15 yards, he's going to do it again. And it's, you know, the fear loop, it's a powerful thing. And I think what you just described, that way of thinking, is something that we can benefit from in integrating it, and neutral thinking being part of it. And I wrote this down the other day, and I got to tweak it a little bit, right? Neutral thinking, positive expectations, or neutral thinking, positive energy. Because I think sometimes when people hear about neutral thinking, players may be like, well, I like getting hype. I like getting excited. Well, yeah, like, but you can be excited, but just understand what side of that is that experience on, right? Is it just like the general vibe of the game because you got a lot of energy, or is it the way you're actually thinking about your performance? You know, and I think when you're on the field, the stick in your hand, being neutral is a pretty good place to be. But like, you know, the guys before and after the game, like they should be excited, you know, and they're amped up. So I was kind of thinking of a framework, because I don't want players to be like dull. You know, I don't want them to think like, oh, neutral thinking, like they're going to do a chest bump and they're like, no, don't chest bump. Don't celebrate here. You know, stay cool. And I don't want them to be passive when they make too many mistakes. You know, so I think there's a sweet spot there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you can think of it as just like one of the many skills that you need. So you want to have that ability to respond when you make a mistake, and to also do what's required the next time too, even if, you know, you just made a good play. But on top of that, I think you're talking about optimism. Like, you have to have optimism as well. You have to have confidence. You want to play with passion and with energy. And so it's not like it's just one of the many skills that you need. But I think it's one that often gets lost in translation, because it's so hard to rebound when you're not playing well, you know? And so that's something that sometimes helps with that.
Yeah, I think a great exercise to help develop optimism, something I've been doing for a while, is what's the best possible outcome of the scenario? So it could be whatever you're doing. You know, all right, what's the best possible outcome here? All right, well, for the rest of my day, like I send all my emails on time. I get on these calls. I'm happy. I get all these things done. Boom, boom, boom. We go beat Landon, have a great experience. Like I can visualize what is the best possible outcome, right? And then going forth and trying to achieve that. And then, you know, whatever, it's in the game. All right, we're down 4-0 in the end of the first quarter. All right, what's the best possible outcome? Well, the boys don't panic. We stay neutral. We pop 4 in a row. We tie it up. We're back in it, right? And we make these adjustments. And I think when you're talking about developing optimism, it's just about using your imagination. Like, well, what's the best thing that could happen? Like, all right, is it believable? Can it actually happen? Cool. Well, let's just move forward with that kind of expectation, and to keep that in our framework. It's been my favorite little trick. I try to do it every day in regards to different scenarios, especially the ones that are stressful. Like, all right, well, I'm really telling myself this story, and I want to tap into mindfulness in a second. I'm really going down this train, and it's taking me to a bad part of town. Wait a minute, let me hop on a different train, and this train's going to the best part of town, and that's where I want to be. And I say that in regards to the train because I listened to a podcast. It was you and Jamie Monroe, Philosophy podcast, and you touched on mindfulness. And I think you explained it about being at the train station. Is that correct? Is that you?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the metaphors.
Yeah, and I loved it because I've heard a lot of metaphors in the clouds. I'm like, all right, I like that. But the train, I was like, man, that's a good one. Can you touch on mindfulness maybe that metaphor, but also, you know, how you've used it in your own life and when you got introduced to those things. And I know you studied philosophy in college, so these things have been on your mind for a while, and just kind of your journey there. And I'll, you know, I would say, I will tell you this, and I know you wanted to make the point to the listeners. I'm not the expert in this, you know, I'm just a person who's studying and I'm passionate, but I told other people this, the way that you explained it on that podcast, not to put any pressure, but the way that you explained it, I was like, I've been listening to spiritual teachers for a long time, and that was so concise and clear. So no pressure there, but can you lay it up for us?
Oh man. Yeah. Well, I think the metaphor there is that, you know, the hardest thing for us to understand is that we are not our thoughts. You know, we're basically just an observer of our thoughts, and everybody has all these crazy things that go through their mind on any given day. And so if you can separate yourself from those thoughts enough that you realize that you're just an observer of those thoughts, and you can kind of choose which ones you feel like help you and which ones that you want to, you know, send down the river. Like we actually did some mindfulness sessions as a coaching staff before the season started.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we kept saying is just send it down the river. You know, if it's something that doesn't help you and it's out of your control, then why are you going to let it bother you too much? And the other metaphor in mindfulness is that, you know, instead of being in the rapids and just like all these thoughts and emotions are coming at you and you're just like treading water, trying to keep your head above water, you know, through a mindfulness practice, you're able to throw a ladder on the bank and watch all those things like a river going by you. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, we would just say, I can't tell you how many times we said river throughout the season where, you know, an injury or, you know, the bus is late. Like there's all this stuff that if you can just smile and just be like, man, I can't do anything about that. Just send it down the river and we'll figure it out. But the metaphor of the train is that, like, you know, you hop on this train and it's a train of thought, you know, like let's say you have a negative thought that comes into your mind and you have no idea where it came from, but you don't understand that that thought is just, it's not you, but you decide to entertain it. And then you're like, all right, let's say it's raining out and the season's over. And all of a sudden I go down this negative train of thoughts, man, sun's never going to come out. Like, what am I going to do all summer? You know, Will's about to wake up from a nap and terrorize me. Like it can just take you wherever you want to go. And all of a sudden you're just like, man, what just happened? Whereas if you are a little bit more mindful and you realize, like, I don't need to entertain that thought. Like just, you know, let me attach myself to a different, more positive thought. And then you kind of grow with that thought, you're in a much better place. And so that's all mindfulness is getting, becoming relentlessly good about bringing yourself back to the present moment and having more awareness as to what's going on in your mind and seeing those thoughts going on in your mind as more of an observer than actually connecting them to your identity. Mm-hmm. And I think that can be pretty powerful.
Definitely powerful. And I mean, this goes to just everything, mental skills, physical skills, the way we communicate with others. It's taking it from a conscious practice and then it becomes subconscious. And I think one of the great ways to do that is make it as easy as possible and integrate things. So in regards to, you know, like the mantra moves, you know, and you and Bach moves, got to make moves. And it's kind of like the river thing, right? It's just like, you know, moves is a little bit more like we need to take action, and river is a little bit more like out of our control.
Right.
You make it super short. You make it so easy. You make it one word, 2 syllables, and it has meaning. But at first there's an awareness of, all right, what is it? What's the river represent? Oh, it represents this thought, you know, these stream of thoughts that I can just send it down there, and it's not going to be present for me. I'm not going to hold on to that energy anymore. And I'm going to focus on what's in front of me. Okay. Maybe you have a mindfulness practice where every day for 5 minutes you sit and you just try to observe your thoughts, which is difficult. Or just throughout the day, you just try to catch yourself hopping on different trains and just replacing yourself into, you know, the VIP section of the best train possible. And you ride that one. And I don't know if the trains have a VIP section, just like first class in the train, you know, or you're sitting on top of the train, something sweet. And but then, over time, you make it smaller and smaller and more integrated. And these little practices, like I think just for you, and then you have the people, the relationships, your coaches being like, River, there it goes, River, and you make it such a habit so that it's unconscious. Like that's the goal that you're trying to get to. And that's the skill goal too. And, Bob Rotella and any sports psychologist, performance coach talks about, consciously you train a new skill, and enough times it becomes unconscious. And then when you're in that state, when you're fully present, it will come out.
Right.
And I think it's important to be mindful of that they take time. And then the goal is to just have it integrated into your identity and your thinking patterns going forward.
Right. And going back to like neutral thinking, like something that we decided to do with our group, every time we broke a huddle, we said, what's next? So it's like, why just say captains every time if we could do something that might be a little bit more helpful to us? So it's like, you're exactly right. The easier you can make things that are really important to you, you don't rely so much on willpower. And again, like I'm not some expert meditator. I struggle with it. I struggle to find the time. I struggle with all this stuff. But like, if you can make it super, super easy, then it becomes part of the way that you think. Mm-hmm. And little cues like that, I think, are really important.
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting flush with like different little things. And I talk about my gratitude practice a lot. It was intentional. It was a journaling practice. It started with 5 things. Then it was 10 things. Now I'm 2.5 years in, and it's every night, and it's my favorite part of the day. And it's just like, just a stream of like, man, this was awesome today, and this is going to be great tomorrow. And I'm just like putting out just ridiculous amounts of energy to it. And it's so enjoyable. And like, I go in my room, and now it's like my hand is grabbing the journal, and I'm not even consciously thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And then the other ones, like gripping the steering wheel, what I've learned through that gratitude practice is to do what you just talked about, right? Like use the huddle as another mindfulness reminder to be neutral in the way that we think. And for me, it's like gripping the steering wheel when I catch myself while I'm driving, going down a certain train of thought, just grip it and be like, yo, you're right here, right now. Like, this is where you actually are. Take a breath, come back to the body, and put a good thought in, right? Or make a call, do something different. And that's like the signs of success, right? So the more you see these type of things, you condition your mind through a visual practice, that you're going to get those, habits more likely ingrained in the people you talk to, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if I'm like, I don't call we don't call to talk about negative things, right? Like when we're on the phone, mm-hmm. we're talking about coaching and life and lacrosse, and being able to, surround yourself with those type of people, and just consistency and the conditioning of the mind is like, that's it, man. I love it.
And the coolest thing that I've learned about meditation is like, it's such a foreign concept. I think before you really get into it, you're like, man, I could never do that. Like I could never just sit, and not think about anything. That's like the most common misconception, is that you're trying to not think about anything. Whereas like you just have an anchor when you're sitting, and the anchor might be your breath. It might be your feet on the ground. Like it might be a guided imagery, like whatever it is. Whenever your mind wanders from that anchor, that's like getting a rep. It's like, oh yes, like I felt myself think about something else besides my breath, and that's like, okay, awesome. Now I'm going to come back to it. So it's like you keep coming back to the present moment and coming back to your anchor, but it's like, if you think of it that way, it's not as frustrating, because no one's just going to sit for 5 or 10 minutes and have no thoughts. That is not the goal of meditation. The goal is to give yourself a certain anchor. And then every time your attention moves away from that, you're like, oh, I just realized I actually have awareness that my mind wandered to that. And that's a good thing. So you grow your awareness of what's actually going on in your head. That way you can figure out how to have a better relationship with those thoughts, and how to entertain the ones that help you, and how to river the ones that don't.
Yeah. I mean, it's just having a growth mindset. But what you just touched on, it wasn't, years after I'd heard about meditation and been trying it, I finally found a podcast, and I think it was Sharon Salzberg. And she's like, yeah, the whole point of this is to celebrate when you come back and you catch yourself.
Exactly.
And she's like, that's where everyone gets it wrong, because people meditate and they go, God, I keep wandering off, and they get frustrated. And, that frustration versus fascination piece, but really it's like celebrate and get excited when you catch yourself. Oh, wow, where I went down that train for a second. Let me come right back. That was a huge shift for me because then it made my own meditation practice a lot more enjoyable.
Exactly.
And then I was like, hey, every time I wander off, I'm getting better. So I wasn't so upset when it was happening so frequently. So I think that's an important piece to know.
Well, and think of how many times you've been like scrolling through Twitter or Instagram and like 10 minutes is gone like that. And you're like, man, what just happened? Like what if you had some sort of an anchor when you were doing that was like, man, this is not really doing anything good for me necessarily. But that's just like it's kind of a metaphor for like how many things are going through your mind at any given moment that you're not really aware of, when if you could be a little bit more focused with your attention and your awareness, you can be a lot more present and a lot more available, really.
Yeah. So we'll take a quick dive talking about social media, scrolling through Twitter, Instagram. Couple pieces. One, reading the book last night, How Champions Think. Tells a story about the former Kentucky basketball coach and how he used to hook up the heart rate monitors. A lot of programs at that level do that to the players, specifically the rookies, the freshmen. And they'd be going through a practice and he wanted to see where their heart rate was at. And they'd be like, this is the hardest practice I've ever played. And he's like, well, this is what the heart rate is at for our older guys who've been doing this because they're playing harder than you. And you actually have more in the tank. You have more to give. And Bob Rotella was just making a point about a lot of people think they're working really hard and they're not working as hard as they can. And I know that when I read that, I go, yeah, damn it. It's the phone. Like for me, it was like, I at the end of the day, I go, did it, had a good day. But then I go, yeah, I definitely scrolled too much, but what has helped me with that and what I wanted to touch on, and for people to like, it is worth it to take the time to come up with a vision and boundaries for your social media intake, right? And be clear, who are the people you're following? Because that's conditioning the way that you're thinking. These are the signs of success that we're talking about. Are you following people that are putting out positive messages that are going to feed, the good side of who you want to become and feed that vision? Is it just, negative bullcrap and things that, like it's just a waste of time? Yeah. And so I'm curious for you, like the CNU Instagram, you guys crush that, right? You're showcasing the program and what you guys stand for. And you're doing a phenomenal job there. But like personally for you, I'm curious, like what is your framework around social media and the way that you use it and view it?
Yeah, I think what you just said is definitely step number one, like follow people and things that I really care about that I feel like are going to, benefit me from some way, from consuming. But honestly, like the best thing for me has been having our kid, I don't want him to see me on my phone, like that's really important to me. And we put our phones away whenever we're in his presence. And, that's going to be such a dangerous device for kids in general. I hate seeing families at dinner and, both kids are just on their iPad the whole time. It's like, those are really valuable interactions that you can miss out on. So that's been a really good boundary for me, is just not to be on my phone around him. And, putting the phone away at the dinner table, like something that we've done recently at CNU is like any team meetings or anything like that. Like there's no phones, no meals. Like we got to talk to each other. And
totally.
It's just become such a filler in our day. You're waiting to pay for your groceries. You whip out your phone. And there's so many moments that are lost doing that. And I'm no better than anyone else. It's really hard, but I think I have a pretty good idea of where I'd eventually like to get to. And there are a lot of moments that you miss out on by just scrolling. But again, like if you are following the right people, like it's your way of getting your news, it's your way of seeing what's going on with your buddies. And it's like anything, it's got to be in moderation. Like you got to know that you just can't sit on your phone all day. Like I start to get really anxious if I spend too much time on my phone. I'll like snap out of it and be like, man, like that's not what I want to be doing. I feel a lot better when I put it away for a decent amount of time. So again, it's not like it's the devil. It's not like, but you just have to know what it's doing to you. You need to consume the stuff that's important to you. and you got to know when to get off of it.
Yeah. And a last piece about it, and we can move on to something else. Sophomore year, college, end of freshman year, going into sophomore year, I'm going through a transformation. It's when I got surgery. That's when I just fully committed to my growth and all these things. And I was on Twitter one day and I just had all these friends from high school and they're just complaining. And I'll never forget, it was my one buddy, Devin, who, not Devin Bushwell from CNU, but a different guy. And he's like, just talking about traffic. And he's like, damn traffic. And I'm like, what am I doing right now? And I'm like, and Devin's he's a Philly fan. So you kind of get the vibe. And he's like, I'm in Devin's head right now. I don't want this. So I made the decision. I unfollowed everybody. And then I just started pumping my Twitter feed with all of these positive people, leaders, coaches, spiritual thought, leaders, all that stuff. And what a difference that made, that every time I opened up my Twitter feed, it was all of the type of things that were helping my growth. And I share that because I've told that to plenty of players before. I'm like, it's okay if you unfollow your friends and just be able to communicate clearly. And I had one person, and it was Devin. One person was like, why'd you unfollow me? What's that about? And I was like, yeah, dude, like I unfollowed everyone. Don't worry. But you're kind of just a little negative. He's like, what's what Twitter's for? Like, all right, whatever. It's for you, not for me. So I shared that one because I think just having a framework around it can be very helpful. All right. So talking about frameworks, let's talk about the framework of success. And I think it's important for anybody to have, really a clear definition for themselves, for maybe the program that they're leading or the people that they're around, and what success looks like for them. So can you talk about how you understand your personal success and, what does success look like for the CNU men's lacrosse team?
Yeah. I think it kind of goes back to some of the philosophies, the personal philosophies that I talked about early, inspire, mentor, exhaust every moment. Like those are a really good kind of rudder, I guess. I can look back at the end of the day and think about, did I mentor anybody? Was the way that I was living, is the way that I'm living inspiring anybody? And then how present was I? Was I actually where my feet were in as many moments as possible? And I think that if you check those three boxes, then it was a pretty good day. And in terms of the program, I think that, yes, this was a very successful year, but I also think that like going back to the luck piece versus the belief piece. I mean, we won 3 games in overtime, and if we hadn't scored that final goal in those 3 games, we wouldn't have made the NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't have made it to the Final Four. So it's like all those other things that I talked about that I think made this season successful. Like we had a great group of guys. They were super connected to each other. They had a good experience. They created memories. Our parents, our alums, like all those things, if you look at it holistically, I think is a much better indicator of success than just like how far in the tournament we went. But at the end of the day, like those are important memories too. Like you have to make those plays, and that's what creates a really unique season. So that's kind of how I view it all there.
Yeah, I completely agree from the coaching side of it. And that's a great way to frame it. I think also for the guys going into next year, talking about, hey man, if we didn't get these 1-goal games that you guys know could go either way, it would have been a different ending. So let's really focus on the things that we can control that make the experience as a whole a success. And then also
in the trap that you could fall into after a year like this year is to think about, well, we're not, we're bringing everybody back, like all these things that would just assume that we should make the Final Four again next year. And that's just not how it works. Yeah. There's only a bigger bullseye on your back that you have to recreate all these things that you work so hard to create throughout the year. And that starts with the relationships that you created. You have to recreate all of that. And it doesn't just happen, that's the trap that you fall into when you do have success.
Yeah, I think that trap, the quote, good is the enemy of great. And I've been seeing that pop up recently. And I think it's so true. And I've seen it with some of the players that I work with because they've had success. They are, unconsciously being a little bit lazy with their skill development and continuing to pursue their level of greatness. And it's because they're really good already. and it's like, well, other people are working. And I think that's a good mindset for guys to take into the summer at any program. If you've had success, like don't let that be the reason that you're not going to continue to get better. And I think everything that you touched on throughout the entire conversation, you're definitely in alignment with. And I know I speak as a friend, as, being someone who played for you, an alum of the program, just super fortunate to have you in my life as a mentor. I speak on behalf of a ton of people in regards to that. Definitely have inspired me in this conversation, and I'm sure it'll inspire a lot of other people. Definitely given a lot of value in regards to being more present. So I would say this is a pretty good start to the day for you in regards to living in alignment with your core values. And I hope everybody else does the same thing. So Mikey, I really appreciate you, my man. This was an awesome conversation. And I'm just so excited for, just keep getting after it.
Yep. We'll do it. We'll do it again, on air, off air, whatever. We'll do it again soon. Thanks for having me.
Of course, brother. We'll talk, man.
All righty.
Peace.